Three parents who have filed an Office of Civil Rights complaint with the U.S. Department of Education because of situations that happened with their children. We're going to give them each opportunity to talk about why they filed the case, what happened as a result of them filing the case. By introducing Mrs. Patton, she'll explain to you what happened in her specific situation.
Good morning. I'm Patricia Elliott-Patton, that's ELLIOTT-PATTON. I have a daughter, two children that are in the Buffalo Public Schools right now. One daughter was in one of our failing schools, or priority focused schools, whichever you want to call it, and I had another daughter that is in a criteria-based school. The reason why I filed my complaint is because my daughter that was in the failing school was doing very poorly in that school. And I knew that this school was a PLA school a couple years ago, and I worked very hard to try to help that school turn it around with the turnaround plan that they offered the school, and nothing happened. I worked very diligently to kind of have a hands-on approach with the school and my daughter by choosing the teachers that taught her and so many different things. But again, to no avail, my daughter still struggled educationally, academically in this particular school. So I got a letter in the mail that said, you know, your child is in a priority and focused school and you have a right to put your child in a school in good standing. And when I saw that letter, I said, okay, great. You know, and I went down to 33 Ash Street and I looked at the list of schools that they had given me. And on that list was a school right in my neighborhood, the very same school that my other daughter was going to. And I applied for that school, which is Olmsted 156. My daughter is a seventh grader or going into the seventh grade at the time, and I said she can make it into this school. She should be able to get in. It says our neighborhood school, and I have another child that already goes there. So I applied. And when I applied, I got a letter back that said, well, we are sad to have to inform you, but your child will not be accepted into Olmsted. You're going to have to wait until the next year, February, to see if you can apply again for another school. This was going to supposedly be February of 2014. When I got that letter in the mail, I was frustrated because I was at wit's end. I had already done so many things to try and help navigate my child's educational process, my child's academic process, and again, to no avail. So what I had done was decided I was going to meet up with the people in charge in the district, the superintendent and others, to talk about this. So I called a protest. I called a press conference. We went down to City Hall and we held this press conference in the Buffalo Board of Education office. And again, at that time, I was still denied access for my child to go to a school in good standing. As of that day, I determined that I was going to stand in front of the superintendent's office with a sign that says move my child to a school in good standing. Because if I didn't do that, then I'm going to let my child down. I took my daughter over to Olmsted 156 on the first day of school last year. We went into the building and we saw the principal. We spoke with them at the front desk and I said, listen, my daughter needs to come to this school. What can I do to get her in? They told me there that I need to follow the proper procedure and apply for her to come. I said, well, I did that already, but she was denied. They said, well, you're going to have to do it again. You're going to have to follow the proper procedure. I asked for a meeting with the principal of that school. He denied to meet with me. So I said, okay. Every week for the next 11 weeks, I went down to City Hall and I held my sign in front of the superintendent's office. Move my child to a school in good standing. Justice delayed is justice denied. Many different things but I stood firm each and every week. Then I got a letter in the mail again that said, we want to help you to get academic supports put in. Well, no, I didn't get a letter in the mail, I'm sorry. I got a phone call that said that we want to help your child and give her after or at-home instruction. With the at-home instruction, she got a ELA teacher. This ELA teacher came and met with my child every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Met with my daughter here at this building. From that time, she still wasn't able to go to the school in good standing to Olmsted. So I still went down every week. And then I got another phone call in the mail that said, Well, we're going to give your child some math support. We know that she needs help with math. So then I got a math instructor. After school, home instruction, right here in this building, every day. So my daughter would go to school all day, then she'd come here in the afternoons and get more instruction from these 2 teachers. Partway through, I'm still standing holding my sign. Then I got another call that said, we have a school in good standing for your child. Would you please come and see the school? So I took the time to go see the school, and she got into that school. But again, this school is in South Buffalo, and it's still struggling. I accepted that school because it's a school in good standing and she's not in another failing environment. But I wanted her to get into this school in my neighborhood that my other daughter already goes to. So this is why I filed my complaint, because there's a disproportionate number of white students as opposed to African American students or other non-white students in that school. I looked at the Little Olmsted, which is in Lincoln Parkway, which is in a very affluent neighborhood. The children in that neighborhood get to go to that school because they live in that neighborhood. I looked at how the children that get to go to that school over on Lincoln Parkway, Little Olmsted, that have siblings that go to that school, they get to go to that school.
Automatic.
So 2 things. You live in a neighborhood, you have a sibling, but you're in an affluent neighborhood, you get to go to Olmsted. But if you live in a neighborhood that's not affluent, this school, Olmsted 156, is right in the middle of the projects. Right in the middle of a very, poor, impoverished neighborhood. Right in the middle of it. Biggest thing in the neighborhood, actually. It's the largest building in that neighborhood, this school. My child cannot walk to the school in her neighborhood, but if you go to Lincoln Parkway, those children can. My child has a sister who's sitting right over there that goes to this school on Suffolk, Olmsted 156. But my child, who lives in the neighborhood that has a sister or brother that goes to that school, can't. This is why I filed my complaint, because this is unfair. This is unfair. My daughter deserves, some people say she doesn't, but my daughter deserves, just like anybody else who believes that their child deserves, my child deserves to go to Olmsted 156. So this is why I filed the complaint. I am Patricia Elliott-Patton. I do intend to send my daughter to this school, and because I filed, other parents are now able to do the same thing and have done the same.
All right. Thank you.
So, Desiree?
Hello, my name is Desiree Radford, Radford, R-A-D, F-O-R-D. I have a high school student, and the reason that I applied, that I filed the lawsuit was because when I received a letter telling me that I had a child who was going to a school that wasn't in good standing, who was attending Bennett High School at the time, I did what I was supposed to do, and I went down and filed for him to change schools. And unfortunately, I did receive a letter telling me that he did not was unable to get in to one of the schools that was chosen. So I went to the school board meeting, and I went there to protest, only to find out that even though I received the letter, it did not apply to high school students, because high school students, the only schools that were in good standing were criteria-based schools. So the letter, in essence, was a lie. It was just simply to make parents feel that they had an option when they did not. So because of that, what was said to me at the time was that I could choose any school that was not in good standing, any high school that was not in good standing, the one that I could best deal with for my child to go to, for him to attend, and he could go there. Unfortunately, that was not a good fit either. Therefore, my son deserved to be able to go to a school in good standing. As a freshman in high school, basically what they were saying is that, we're going to make changes, eventually, but unfortunately, my son being in high school doesn't have a whole lot of time. He only has a certain number of years, and I would like to see him graduate from a school in good standing. And so that is why I filed my lawsuit. Now, due to the fact, because I did, now my son will receive the opportunity to, you know, if he's unable to get in this year, he will receive the support over the next year that he needs in order to qualify for the criteria-based schools. And other parents as well will have the opportunity to do what I did and to file a lawsuit if that's what they need to do in order to get their child into a school with standing.
And Ms. Carolette Meadows.
Hi, I'm Carolette Meadows. That's C-A-R-O-L-E-T-T-E, M-E-A-D-O-W-S. And the reason that I filed my lawsuit was I had been, my child was enrolled in one of the local charter schools, and she had been there for a couple years, and I disenrolled her, and we homeschooled using the K-12 program for about a year and a half. And during that time, I had applied to Homestead School, and I was told that my daughter did not pass the test for admissions. So at that time, I decided, okay, well, I want to put my daughter back in formal education so she can socialize with other children and things. So I had her test for Elmwood Franklin School to see what would happen. My daughter was not only accepted to Elmwood Franklin, she was given a substantial financial aid scholarship. And when they did all of her assessments, IQ and academic grade level, and they scored her, even after homeschooling, she not only rated at grade level, she rated above grade level. And we've been at Elmwood Franklin for the past 2 years. And now, during those 2 years, I have still applied to Olmsted and City Honors, trying to see if she can get admitted. And each year, for the past 3 years, they have said that she's not passing the test. But yet and still, she's at Elmwood Franklin and performing academically. And she speaks Chinese. And I was like, after this year, I couldn't think of an excuse anymore. My first excuse was, well, maybe she had a bad day and she just didn't test well. Then the second time it was, well, I don't know what happened. And then this year when it happened again, I was like, something is not right. And so when I saw Miss Elliott on the news, it triggered my thought process. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think of that. And I was like, well, I'm going to file a complaint too, because it makes no sense to me that my daughter can be at an elite private school and perform, but she can't get into one of the public schools. And so I got my letter, and I submitted my complaint, and I received my letter this past week that said that indeed they were indicating the Buffalo Public Schools for discrimination. And just as one of the other parents had said that, you know, how they were going to offer support services if the child was deemed inadmissible, because they're supposed to be reevaluating my daughter's application, and if she's still not eligible for admission, giving her support services, even though the bone of contention that I have is that they get to reevaluate her again at the end of a year of support services, and if they decide she's still not eligible, they just have to explain it to the OCR. So in my eyes, kind of letting the Buffalo Public Schools govern her reassessment and her tutorial and then her reassessment again, it's like allowing the fox to mind the chickens after the fox bit the chicken.
Wow.
So I think there needs to be an independent review of my child's, all of our children's capabilities to see if indeed they are eligible to be in these schools.
But in the case of Carolette, she mentioned that your daughter had tested well, really well, and had the credentials to go to a city school in good standing. And do you think that's blatant racism there? Because do you feel your child measured up as good as any white student at that school?
I feel that my daughter more than likely not only measured as well, I'm sure she measured better than some of them. I was not a parent who slouched in homeschooling using the curriculum that we were using. I was very successful with K-12 Because like I said, after coming off of K-12, we went into Elmwood Franklin and were able to test into Elmwood Franklin. So evidently, she is able to compete with Caucasian students, because that's who's predominantly at
Well,
Elmwood
what was
Franklin.
the answer to you then? What was the justification for not accepting her?
They said she was not passing the test.
Which, did they say which test?
The admission, they just,
I
I just had a generic stop letter that said that my child had not passed the admission, had not met the admissions criteria to be admitted into the school.
And they didn't differentiate between the written test, the character references,
No, it just said she did not meet the criteria to be admitted into either program. So not only was she not able, I could have even seen if they said, oh, she can't make it into city honors. And they said, oh, well, she met the standard for Olmsted. But to say she didn't make it into either, and she's at Elmwood Franklin with no disciplinary record, learning foreign languages and performing academically and competing with her Caucasian peers, that's problematic to say she can't get into this criteria-based school.
and her scores were as good as any Caucasian student.
At Elmwood Franklin?
Yeah.
Yes, she was. Absolutely, she was. And the only reason we are now not going back to Elmwood Franklin is not for any academic disciplinary action or behavioral issues. It's just because with the transition that Elmwood Franklin has gone through over the past couple of years, they can't give us the financial aid that we had, and I can't afford to send her. So if I can't get her in anywhere, I've already reapplied and submitted my curriculum from K-12, because that's the program that I was using, to go ahead and begin homeschooling her again, because we can't afford to go back.
What's your best choice school in the city?
Of course.
Where would your daughter go if not Elmwood Franklin and she's not admitted to city honors?
We'll be back on the K-12 homeschooling program.
But if she was to go to a public school?
Oh, well, actually, it's funny that you asked me that question, because if I had to have a choice that was not a criteria-based school, I had actually picked the Discovery School, which is in South Buffalo, because I live in South Buffalo. But for some reason, even though I live in South Buffalo, they wouldn't let her in.
So it's,
And Discovery School, even though it's not a criteria-based school, has the same standard as what you just described for the Olmsted School over in the affluent neighborhood. They say, oh, we have a certain amount of seats that are reserved for kids in our neighborhood, but I'm in the neighborhood, so what do you mean she can't come?
And it's a school in good standing.
And it's a school in good standing.
Do you think the affluent neighborhood is getting money from parents to support the educational process, and that's why they're being chosen?
I think that the problem is that the affluent schools are very politically connected, and there's a status quo that doesn't want to commingle their children with other children. And there's also a problem with people from the suburbs who are paying for seats in our kids' schools. Because my son graduated from performing arts, and there was a suburban parent who was paying an out-of-district tuition for her son to be in performing arts, not because it was performing so well, but because her son had certain needs, and performing arts has that demographic of students that made him be emotionally secure with who he was as a person. So his mother was willing to pay the out-of-district tuition to have her son in performing arts. And that same thing happens in city honors and Olmsted, where out-of-district parents can pay for their kids' seats. And that's a sin. It's egregious, because these kids already have an advantage, a socioeconomic advantage and an educational advantage, being where they are. But then they come into the city and take something that our kids could benefit from. And we are taxpayers from the top to the bottom. Even if you're a taxpayer, you're a taxpayer. If your Section 8 pays your landlord's rent, and the rent pays the city taxes, then you've paid into the school system. And our seats should not be sold to people who already come from a good school district. The only way somebody from the suburbs should be able to pay an out-of-district tuition for their kid to attend a Buffalo school is if there's a vacancy that nobody's claiming, and I don't think that would ever happen.
What's the percent? How many suburban seats are there?
From
What
what
percentage of these schools?
from what I've been told, of course, you guys will have to file a FOIA to make sure, because I don't know for a fact. But from what I've been told from friends that I have in the school district, is that City Honors and Hutch Tech both reserve 25 seats to be sold. And if those 25 seats aren't filled, then they'll go ahead and fill it with the city kid.
I also want to say, you know, right now, more than ever, I've seen more, I'm going to just say it, there's been more white women in our communities, in this community, on the east side of Buffalo. People are moving back to Buffalo.
That's right.
Because of Say Yes to Education. People are moving back. I'm not seeing whole families, but I'm seeing white women at the bus stop with baby strollers. I'm seeing white women in, you know, the Family Dollars, in the corner stores, and doing many things. I have nothing there. I'm not prejudiced. I'm not racist. But what I'm saying is people are moving back into our community. And they're going to take advantage, and they're going to move in, and they're going to do what they need to do to make sure their children get what their children need. Say Yes to Education is real. It's here. It's here for the next, all the way until 2033. So they're planning for their children and their children's children. I'm planning for my child. I'm planning for my posterity. I'm planning for my child and my children's children just the same. And I'm staying here. I'm not taking my child out to go somewhere else. So that's the thing. We have to continue to stick together. We have to continue to build ourselves up. We have to continue to stand firm on our convictions and what we know to be the truth, that our children deserve a sound basic, a solid, global, good education. Our children need to be able to compete worldwide.
That's right.
And what I'm gonna add is, I don't know how these ladies filed their complaints. I didn't do anything spectacular. I did not hire a lawyer. I didn't pay anything out of my pocket. I went on the internet. I went to the OCR's website. I filed my complaint online. All I did was tell them the facts. I kept it simple, sent it in, and I got a return answer.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.